The best in the world is cooked in France. And in France, the best cooking is in Paris. Well, in Paris Gusteau cooks the best. Restaurant Gusteau was a highlight of Paris, where tables were reserved 5 months in advance. Everyone was happy for his success, because he was the youngest person to earn 5 stars. Almost everyone but one critic of ego. On the roof of the hut lived with his family a rat Remy, who had too sophisticated taste and smell. He had a brother Emile. Their father was the leader of the pack. With the help of his gift, Remy could smell the poison and was used as a detector. He had different views on life with his dad. Remy thought that they were thieves, because they were stealing food from the garbage can. He always wanted to cook. He was fascinated by people, especially Gusteau. Entering the house, he saw a TV program with this boss. Remy began to live a double life. No one knew about it except Emile. Remy even walked on 2 legs, saying that he constantly had to wash his paws. He found cheese, mushrooms and rosemary, intending to cook them on the chimney antenna. Lightning struck the antenna and the mushroom was perfectly cooked. But Remy wanted saffron, so they climbed into the kitchen. Emile was on guard. The first one even knew how to read, so he told everyone about Gusteau's well-known book Everyone Can Cook. It was shown on TV that Gusteau's restaurant lost 2 stars because of the critic ego, as well as because of the death. Suddenly, the old lady who lived in the house woke up and started shooting with a gun. She shot at the ceiling. The ceiling collapsed and hundreds of rodents began to flee, announcing the evacuation, but Remy only tried to save Gusteau's book, because it was the most valuable to him. The rodents ran to the boats and began to swim down the river through the sewers. Together with the book, Remy barely swam out, as the current was very strong and fast. Having got out, he sat and waited for any sound, voice, sign, but his family was not there. He flipped through the damp pages of the book, looking at Gusteau's portrait and the food. He was hungry. Suddenly, Gusteau's portrait began to say that Remy should go upstairs. The rat did it, because he wanted to eat incredibly badly. He got out and saw people, wanting to steal a crumb of bread. But the spirit of Gusteau appeared from the rat's imagination, who said that Remy is above theft and there will always be food if you like to cook. So the rat climbed up, and then he saw the Eiffel Tower and realized that he had been in Paris all this time. His gaze fell straight down to the Gusteau restaurant sign, which was even more shocking. Remy made his way to the kitchen window of the restaurant and watched the process in the kitchen. There was a guy who was waiting for something. Chef Schroeder came out. That guy, whose name was Linguini, was the son of Renata, who in turn was Gusteau's lover until her death. He was hired as a cleaner at a restaurant. Remy was talking to an imaginary Gusteau, who asked him about the people in the kitchen, and when Gusteau pointed to Linguini, the rat replied that he was nobody, because he was a cleaner. The boy overturned the pot of soup and began to add incomprehensible ingredients. Remy, watching this, panicked, because he understood that the Linguini would only spoil the soup. Remy accidentally fell into the kitchen. He was heading for the window, but right next to him was that soup. His conscience did not allow him to leave everything. Trying to fix everything, he stayed there and with the help of his sense of smell began to turn the soup into a masterpiece. Linguini watched all this. He caught Remy. The boss came and saw the cleaner with the scoop. The soup was taken to the hall, and Schroeder, in turn, began to shout at Linguini because he thought that it was he who dared to cook in the kitchen, but in fact it was all Remy. The boss was called to the hall. When Schroeder returned, he reported that it was not just a client, but also a critic of Leclerc. She liked the soup. Kitchen girl Colette also tried the soup. Schroeder was going to fire Linguini, but Colette came to his defense, because he had created something that the critics liked, and if he was kicked out, how could they call their place Gusteau if they didn't live up to his truth that anyone could cook? The cleaner was left with the condition that he should make the soup again, but the scrubber would keep a close eye on him. Remy was noticed, and Linguini was ordered to kill the rat. They came to the river, but the boy could not take the life of the living creature. Linguini began to say that he did not know how to cook, and the rat in turn nodded or shook his head to support the conversation. The guy let him go, saying they were partners, and Remy ran away. However, he felt sorry for the unsuccessful cook, so he returned. Remy and Linguini came to the guy's house, where there was an incredible view from the window of the Eiffel Tower. The next morning, Remy made an omelette with basil for them both to have for breakfast. The rat and the boy returned to the kitchen. They tried to find a way to understand each other, and it was found. Remy climbed onto Linguini's head, and by pulling on the locks, the rat could control the boy's limbs. When they got home, they started training. Remy studied. They cooked pancakes together, then pasta, learned to pour wine, cut vegetables. In the end, Remy became a master and they prepared a wonderful soup, which Schroeder approved. Colette was supposed to brief the Linguini on their work schedule and general rules of the kitchen, but she was quite aggressive because she didn't want to risk her seat. At that time, Chef Schroeder was trying to come up with a funny advertising campaign with Gusteau cardboard figures in his office. Then he sat down to read a letter from Renata, Linguini's mother. The boss was shocked. Renata said that Linguini is Gusteau's son. Schroeder called his lawyer urgently, talking about Gusteau's will and whether there was any way Linguini and his mother's letter could prevent the restaurant from becoming Schroeder's. Gusteau's cap lawyer retrieves Gusteau's hair and then tells the boss to also take some of Linguini's DNA to see if he could be Gusteau's son. Colette began to teach him, telling him various secrets, as well as about the cooks. For example, Lalo, who was a Saucy, ran away from home at the age of 12, then worked as an acrobat in a circus, but was fired when he was caught with the owner's daughter. Horst Suchef, he was in prison, but no one knows for what exactly, because every time he told a new story. Poppy Dew's second in command, you shouldn't even try to play cards with him because he's persona non grata in Las Vegas, and Lyris was selling weapons to the rebels, but he wouldn't say which ones either. Colette speculated that the rebellion must have been put down if he didn't say. All the chefs were artists, and even Linguini, because he also became a member of their Gusteau restaurant family. The waiter ran into the kitchen almost hysterically. Customers asked for something new. They remembered all the recipes and urgently needed something new like linguine soup. Schroeder came up with some plan of his own, giving the boy an old recipe that even Gusteau himself considered a failure. Colette was supposed to help Linguini. Preparation has begun. Remy wanted to improvise rather than follow a recipe. Colette was supposed to pour licorice and anchovy sauce, but Remy, directing the boy, poured a completely different sauce. People were delighted and customers ordered more and more. The team had a wonderful evening. Linguini brought out some goodies for Remy, while Schroeder began to understand that something was not clean because he had already seen the rat several times. The boss invited him to his office for a drink. Remy, in turn, was eating outside, and then he saw a meal and stole some food from the refrigerator. The woodcutter tried to coax the boy into talking about the rat, but he didn't say anything, but only babbled about some stupid thing. At that time, Remy went to his family, where they literally arranged a whole celebration in honor of his return, and then he immediately decided to leave, because all birds fly out of the nest sooner or later. The father noticed that his son spoke like a human, and then he was going to show him something. Dad took him to the rat poison store where their bodies were also hanging. Remy returned to the restaurant. There was Linguini, who fell asleep while cleaning the kitchen. There was no way the rat could wake him up when Colette arrived, so he climbed on top of his head and tried to control his body. The girl admitted that she even liked him. He woke up and then tried to confess something about Remy, but ended up kissing her instead. Critic Ego received word that Gusteau's restaurant was thriving and popular. Schroeder's lawyer confirmed that Linguini is Gusteau's son. The boy himself began to walk with Colette, forgetting about Remy. The rat came back and there were Emile and his friends who wanted Remy to steal the food again. The refrigerator was locked. Remy sneaked into the chief's office and accidentally found a letter from Renata, as well as a DNA test. At the same second, Schroeder came in, so the rat quickly stole these documents to bring them to Linguini. Colette and the boy got it and learned the truth. The news quickly spread around the city. Schroeder was removed from his post. Linguini moved to another place of residence. Remy still stole food for his pack. Schroeder called the sanitary inspection, saying that there were rats in Gusteau's restaurant. Just as Ego's critic came, he had to visit somehow if Linguini had already entered this dangerous game. Rats still stole food. Linguini came and saw all this, banishing Remy. The Skinner caught the rat to use it as evidence. Critic Ego ordered something to surprise. Scurator also came to the restaurant and ordered all the same things as Ego. Emile released his brother. In Linguini, everything was going crazy. I immediately appeared to Remy. The boy defended him and told everyone this, but they refused to believe and folded their caps, even Colette, but she came back after remembering Gusteau's motto. Everyone could cook. Linguini sank into himself. Remy didn't know what to do, but his father came and said that the pack would help. Just then the inspector came, but the rats grabbed him, tied him up and threw him into the refrigerator. All the rats were washed. Remy commanded them and divided them into sectors. Linguini, wearing rollers, decided that he would serve everything as a waiter. Suddenly, Colette stopped by and was surprised to see rats. She decided to help them. Remy decided to feed Ego some ratatouille. As soon as the critic tried it, he seemed to plunge into his childhood, because this is exactly what his mother used to cook. His pen fell out of shock. Ego was surprised and began to eat with pleasure, even Scurator, who ran into the kitchen. He was also tied up and thrown into the refrigerator. The critic asked to thank the cook, but Linguini replied that only the waiter. Colette made it a condition that Ego could only say thank you if he waited until the rest of the customers left. They showed him Remy and Linguini explained everything. Ego left without saying a word. His review came out the next day and it was great. Restaurant Gusteau closed, but Colette and Linguini opened a new place thanks to Ego. The critic kept ordering ratatouille. Linguini worked purely as a waiter. Every time Ego asked Remy to surprise him and he surprised him. There was also a facility for rats on the roof, because if it weren't for them, it wouldn't exist. People lined up to the establishment named after Remy and Ratatouille. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and watch even more cartoons. Write in the comments if you have watched this cartoon before and if you liked it.